Hey there, this is Dennis Anyone with Dennis Hensley, a podcast about making things up and making things happen. I love talking to people who are creative and find ways to express it. Sometimes those ways pay money, sometimes they don't, but they do it anyway. And I love to talk about that spirit that people have in them. And today my guest is an old friend of mine. His name is Bob Merrick. He works in Hollywood and has done a lot of different things in the industry, in production on that side, but he's also a writer. And he has a wonderful Substack that he came out with a couple years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, called Magnificent Obsession, which I didn't know the reason for the name until I did the interview with him, and it's really interesting, so you'll have to listen to hear. But he writes about his life. He writes about getting divorced. He writes about his family. He writes about being friends with celebrities and getting to know Lance Bass of NSync, becoming friends with him so much so that Lance officiated Bob's recent wedding a while back, co-officiated, I think, with Joanna Garcia. So you get the idea. Debbie Gibson performed. It was that kind of a wedding. Anyway, it was so fun to talk to Bob about his Substack and why this outlet is meaningful to him. And hopefully it'll inspire other people to find a way to express themselves and tell their stories. I think that's one of the themes that Bob and I talk about in the interview. But before we get to that, I want to remind you that if you like this podcast, there are a few ways you can support it. You can go to DennisAnyone.net and leave a tip in my virtual tip jar. Scott W. did that recently over the holidays. I was like, oh, wow, look at that. And I really appreciate that. So that's one thing you can do. You can also become a subscriber to my Substack and my Patreon, which is called Dennis Hensley's Happy and Gay. It's a additional episode of the podcast. I do one a week, pretty much. I think I missed a week over the holidays. I don't know what day it is. Does anyone else not know what day it is? Like, I really lost track of the thread of time and days this time in the holidays. I think it's normal, but this time for me in particular, like, you could have told me it was Thursday and it could have been like Saturday. Like, I mean, I was way off. Anyway, yeah, it's called Dennis Hensley's Happy and Gay. It's on Patreon and Substack, the same content. Go there and listen and check it out. The other thing you can do is become a subscriber to DNR Studios. I'm part of this fun, crazy group of gay shows under the Derek and Romaine podcast banner. And if you subscribe, you get my show early and you get all these other cool queer shows. So check that out at DNR Studios. It's fun to be part of that crazy crew. All right, enough of the plugs. Here now is my interview with Bob Merrick. Joining me now from his home in the San Fernando Valley, it's my friend Bob Merrick. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Dennis. I love that. Like, I'm a Valley boy.
You are totally a Valley boy. I've been to your place. You hosted a wonderful dinner party and game night for me when we were getting up and running on Search Party. By the way, those games are on their way now from China. There were a few little hiccups, but they're on their way. They're on a boat somewhere. A slow boat from China. Yes. But your home is beautiful and you're always so hospitable. And I look back on the night and the pictures and I'm like, Bob is the best. Like, that dinner, like, I there was Tupperware to go containers, like, for later, like, just, you show up for folks. And that's fun to be around and lovely to be around. But also you have great stories, and you started the Substack last year, or maybe a year and a half ago, called Magnificent Obsession, where you tell your stories. I love your Substack. I love reading things about you that I didn't know. But there's always like weird twists and like, what? There's always like, yeah. So we'll get into that and some more of the specifics. But what made you want to inspire? What inspired you to start your Substack? Were you thinking like, I want to make money on this, or I want to express myself? What was the motivation going in?
No. Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. You're always so sweet to me. But no, the Substack thing was kind of funny because, years ago, over a decade now, I had started doing a little radio show, and I had started it like out of my kitchen, and it grew and grew. And eventually I was doing it at a radio station. You came and co-hosted.
I remember that. It was fun.
Yeah. But I remember it was at a time when I would say, okay, we are live Monday through Friday for 2 hours, but if you miss it, it's available on iTunes as a podcast. And every single person would say, what's a podcast? Like, so that tells you, if I could have just kept that thing on the air like another 6 months, because I had like 30,000 listeners, like I was doing very well. But but that being said, it had always been my dream to do that, to host a radio show and do all of that stuff. But also you get really burned out when all of a sudden, like, you know, there's a commitment and you have to do it and you're not being paid for it and everything else. So again, that expired. Like I stopped doing that around 2014. And so when it came time to do my Substack, I was really kind of like, I'd been wanting to dip my toe in it, but I was really scared about charging people for it and having to have that commitment of like releasing the content. Right. And I have to have at least 2 things a week. And so like, I really was like hesitant about it, but I knew, you know, I have all these stories. I've always wanted to write a memoir. I'm, you know, like, and I've always had these stories and I'm like, oh, someday somebody's going to come knocking on my door for a memoir. And it's like, no one's ever going to come knocking for a memoir. And so I was like, I'm just going to start writing it. And I have to give credit and a shout out to Jerry Portwood. He is a former editor over at Rolling Stone and Out Magazine. And I had been writing, oh my God, this was like 2005. I was writing a lot for out.com for our friend Jeffrey Epstein,
right.
Not the other Jeffrey Epstein that takes up a lot of the front page news these days, but we have another Jeffrey Epstein. So Jeffrey had me writing for Out Magazine. So I can already tell I'm all over the place with this story.
It's all good.
But in 2024, I got married, and my wedding was very unusual in the sense that we had Lance Bass and Joanna Garcia Swisher. They officiated our wedding. And then Debbie Gibson, she sang Lost in Your Eyes. And then she did a 9 hour, felt like 9 hours.
I'm like, she is a trooper. She would do a 9 hour thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, she did a 9-minute ABBA medley, like to get everybody on the dance floor. And then just all these other crazy things like Elizabeth Mitchell, all these friends, really dear friends of mine. So I know it sounds name droppy, but, and so I had decided to reach out to Matthew Breen, who also used to be the editor over at Out Magazine, because that's who I only talked to. And he was like, here's the people at Out Magazine. He's like, but you should really reach out to Jerry Portwood because he is starting this new project called the Queer Love Project. And so I reached out to Jerry, and I'm like, Jerry, you know, I want to share, especially because when I was writing for Out Magazine, I had a column that was all about like me losing weight and me trying to find love. And I thought this might be like a nice button. I wasn't looking to sell the photos or anything, but just to be like, look what I did. You know, like it kind of came full circle, and it's got lots of gay notes, and I had a big gay wedding. And anyways, and so Jerry was immediately like, well, that sounds really interesting. He's like, but I want to hear about the story of your divorce. Like,
oh wow,
he wanted to hear. He didn't really care so much about the big, fun gay wedding.
Yeah, but Debbie Gibson did a 9-minute ABBA medley, and they're like, no, talk about the divorce.
No, talk about the divorce. And I was just kind of like, I was kind of taken aback because I'm like, I don't know, this wasn't the story I was ready to launch with. But thanks to Jerry, he really got me to sit down and write, because my first marriage was challenging, to say the least. And again, to say the least and to say the most. And so I sat down and I wrote it, and I wrote something I was really proud of. But then I was like, okay, this is my opportunity to launch. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to launch my Substack, because here I'm getting a platform on his platform. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to finally do it. And so right. I launched my Substack, and I just made some some promises to myself that I am really glad that I've kept, because again, I've been doing it for over a year and a half now. And there are times when I've published like 2 columns in a week. And then there's other times where I haven't published anything in 2 months.
Yeah.
And so it really is like, it's keeping it fun for me. And I'm always kind of like percolating, like, what story do I want to do next?
Right.
I'm pretty sure that there's a whole story coming up soon about George Clooney teaching me how to play basketball. And
I mean, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in. That sounds good.
Yeah, there's just all these crazy stories. And like I said, and if someday somebody comes calling and wants to put them all together and publish them as a memoir, awesome. And if not, then I feel like I've created this really great space that I've gotten to write them and share them. And I don't know, it's been bringing me a lot of creative joy in a time that has been really difficult to navigate. And obviously I'm speaking about like our political backdrop of, it's really hard to do the small things that bring us joy because they feel frivolous.
Yeah.
And yet frivolity is what we need so much more than anything is just,
we just have to keep going. We have to find ways to keep going. And if this helps us keep going, then that's a good thing. I think you're the first friend that I know, gay friend, that's been married twice.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to rack my brain. I have friends that have been married, maybe that split, but I don't think they got married again. Maybe there was other couples. When you wrote about your divorce, what surprised you about people's reactions? Like, what were the reactions like? Because, gay marriage is relatively new. And so there's not a bunch of gay divorce stories out there, and so I'm curious what people took away from it or what that was like.
It's funny because it's really the backdrop of what we're always talking about when we're talking about equality, right? Like equality just means we just want to be treated like everyone else.
Yeah.
We're not actually looking to be treated exceptionally. And so I think that was probably the most interesting thing was everyone's response was that they could relate, and when I say everyone, I mean like it's not a gay thing. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of women who have like dealt with men who are narcissists and, dealt with some of the behaviors that I had to navigate in my relationship. And so no one was really, everyone essentially just like really, they responded in that way where it was like, this is totally relatable. Honestly, I think it's what's happening with this phenomenon right now with heated rivalry. You know what I mean? Like, yes, even us gay people, we all tuned in because we heard there was like hot gay hockey porn. But gay men are not what has like made that show explode. It's women. Shockingly, it's lesbian women, but it's women. And it's because they're getting like the ultimate love story. They don't care that it's between two men. And so that was a lot of the response that I got from that. The other stuff was, I had never really talked a lot in detail about some of the stuff I went through. And believe it or not, I actually held back a lot because my intention for sharing the story wasn't to be salacious, wasn't to call my ex out. It was more about like, this is what I went through. How did I end up in such a dark place? Because there's a lot of choices that I made in that relationship where I minimized myself, I shrunk myself, I lost myself, I disconnected from myself. And how did I go from that to then I'm now married to the most incredible, kind and generous, sweetest man. We've been together now for 6 years, but like what it was more of like what kept me motivated to not just, throw in the towel, give up, gain 200 pounds, say I'm never dating ever again. My ex-husband, I felt like he got 3 years with me. He got 3 years of my life. And he didn't get to have more. So meaning I wasn't going to let him continue having the next 30 years of my life where I'm not going to date men and I'm not going to open my heart again.
Right.
So anyways, so that was a lot of the inspiration behind, I was like, okay, it's time to just do this. Stop talking about, the idea of doing it. And I did it. And I'm so glad that I did. I've talked to you about it a lot. Like there's just even you doing your podcast and all the stuff that you have going on, like, it just kind of helps keep us going. And it's so hard to not succumb to the noise of, I call it why bother?
Yeah.
You know, like it's so easy to just be like, why bother? What does it matter? You know, like the world's falling apart. But it's like, but it does matter, because I think if you walk around feeling like you have a purpose and you're happy and, you know, like you're looking at things in a different way because you know you need something to talk about on your show, or,
right.
You know I want to write about something. Like when I write, I feel a sense of accomplishment, and I feel like a little light goes off inside of me. And so then when I leave the house, like I take that light with me.
Yeah.
It's not about what I just wrote. It's just about like, I'm not walking around feeling, you know, like Charlie Brown, like I, you know, like wah wah.
Exactly.
So that's why I think that's so important.
Well, it gives you a place to put something. Like you have these notions and these ideas, and you're like, oh, I can talk about this on my, you know, Happy and Gay podcast or whatever. Like this feels like it can go there. And then I feel like I don't know, it feels good to put it somewhere. And like, that's what you're doing here. You mentioned the women's reactions to your piece. Of all the gay men I know, I feel like you have the most female friends. And I've had a lot of female friends in my life, and I still have some, and I love them. But I think as you get older, they kind of drift away. They're harder to connect with. They're getting married. They're like, I need to lock down a family. I don't have time to go to the Abbey with you. Do you know what I mean? Like, and part of it might be on my thing, but you've kept them. They're like, women in your life are front and center. Can you talk about that? Do you notice that it's different with you than other people, or is it just me that seems that observes that?
I don't know I don't know how different it is with other people. I do think there's a sense of, I think you're talking about something that's very important, which is, you know, as we all started to age, and like, you know, our straight female friends, they got married, started having kids. And I do think that that's probably something that happens with gay men, is because, you know, I have zero interest in having my own kids, but I do like being, you know, the funkle, the gunkle, whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? Like I like that role. I like being able to spoil them. I like being able to, you know, inspire them. Like I like being a part of the village that's helping raise them. Like I do take a pride in that. And I think that is what has allowed a lot of the female relationships who have, you know, gone and gotten married and had kids. A lot of gay men don't, again, this is my opinion, but I think, you know, a lot of gay men are like, oh, you have a baby, like call me in 18 years, you know, when
I might be guilty of that a little bit.
Yeah. When they leave the house, that's when we can, by the way, I have a female friend. She's straight and she's a female and married to her husband. She kills me because she's like, we've been friends for years, and she'll be like, well, I lost another one today. And I'll be like, oh no, what's wrong? And she's like, I just found out my friend's pregnant. So I'm not going to be speaking to her for the next 18 years. And I'm like,
she's done.
She's done. She's like, I hate kids.
Yeah.
So I think there's part of that. I'm sure, like, again, I've never actually sat and thought about it, but that would be my guess. And then of course the other female friends, and this, I mean, you must notice this. I don't remember when I was young having so many adult friends who are not just single, but like almost like permanently single. Like, especially, and a lot of my female straight friends, like I have, I don't know, at least 7 that I could say that are close female friends that I've known for over 20 years who've never had a boyfriend, and all those. And so they're a little bit more available because, again, they don't have kids. But I think that I don't know that it gets talked about as much, the people that are just fine being on their own. And it's not a judgment call. Like, they don't want it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I think if the right person came along, they would certainly take it. But I'm kind of surprised there's a lot of people who are just kind of like, no, I'm good. I like what I like. I like going to bed and being able to sleep in my bed, and I'm, you know, independent. I make my own money. And, so I don't know. I'm sure that's part of it too.
That's interesting. Yeah. I want to talk about boy bands with you, because the reason we kind of first talked to each other and got to know each other a little bit was We were at a show at the Village at the Renberg Theater, like in 2000, I think. Maybe it was Miss Coco Peru or something
April,
like that.
I did because I just did a feature on you on
which was
my
very
Substack.
Sweet of you, by the way. I appreciate it. You did a great job.
I was so happy to, because I think you need to be celebrated too. But I did so much research trying to figure out, and because the internet wasn't what it was, I was able to pinpoint that it was April of 2000.
April of 2000 that we met at the Renberg Theater. We were both in the audience.
Yeah.
And we were talking about something. But we ended up.
I already knew you because I knew, and again, let me give a shout out while I have this opportunity as well, since we're sitting here talking about me and my life as a writer.
Yeah.
When I first moved to LA, one of my favorite books was Misadventures in the 213. And it wasn't just about like the book and the story itself. Like it was kind of like and Sex and the City didn't even exist, but it was kind of like oh my God, I want to be a gay writer. Like I want to, there's voices that haven't been tapped into, and I loved that book. And so I had already been sort of like following you as best as you could do back then before the internet, but also certainly before social media. And I had just happened to see that you were performing, you were doing a one-man show at the Renberg.
Right.
No idea how I found out.
Because the Renberg had just started doing shows. That was new. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had gone to that. I don't think I met you there. And then I'm sure while we were there was probably an advertisement. You're probably right. It was probably someone like Coco Peru or something. Or it could have been Facts of Life.
Maybe.
I don't know. It was something with Christian McLaughlin. There was something in that era. Anyways, and I sat down and you sat down in front of me, and that's when I started chatting with you.
Right.
That much I know.
That sounds right. I love that you went and dug deep for the dates. But we talked about O-Town, the show that was like the Making the Band show. And I said that my favorite was Akaika, the Hawaiian one. And you said, did you see him on Rosie O'Donnell? And I was like, no, I missed it. And you fucking made me a VHS and sent me a VHS of Akaika's appearance on the Ellen show. And like that's
Rosie.
The Rosie show. Oh, that's so much better. Oh, I almost want to start the entire podcast over. I really never want to swap out Ellen for Rosie. To me, they are two different entities. Their properties are very different.
And under any other circumstance, I would not have corrected you.
No, thank you. You know what? 2026 is ruined. It's ruined. Day 5, we're fucked. Anyways, no. You went out of your way to do that. You were very generous with people, and I've always loved that about you. And you have a sense of fun. Like if there's a theme party, you go all the way. But you also have this thoughtful side, and you've been through a lot of stuff. And reading your Substack is been like, oh wow, I didn't know that about Bob. There's a piece that you wrote about what's in a name when there were all of these new laws coming into place about you had to have the birth certificate had to match the voting records or whatever it was. And you realized, oh shit, my name is an issue. And you talk about your background and your father and finding out the person that you thought was your father was not your father. I didn't know any of this stuff. What has it been like for you to kind of open up about some of these things in your background? Or has it been cathartic in a way? Is it ever painful? What's it been like to write about the more serious things that you write about? Yeah,
so it's been cathartic is really the perfect word. It's actually kind of interesting, even including that first one about my ex-husband. There is something about once I write it and I publish it, it really kind of like let's say it's sitting on my shoulders.
Yeah.
Once I write it, it just kind of like leaves my shoulders.
Right.
And a lot of these that I've been choosing have been stories that are, that I've sat on for a long time, right. Or that I'd been working on for a long time, or, I would save them for a dinner party or something. And so they're always kind of like fresh, or not fresh, but like they're like, once I've been publishing them, it's like they don't exist anymore. Like even you just saying that part about my name, where I was kind of like, oh yeah, I did tell that story. I'm like it takes away whatever charge that story had. So like if it was again, some of the stuff I went through with my ex-husband, like all of a sudden I'm like, I don't get charged by him anymore, because my story, my voice it's out there.
Right.
And like at no point, like if he were to want to try to argue it and, you know, say that didn't happen or something, but you know, there's a great quote from Elizabeth Gilbert. She says, if you don't like what I wrote, go write your own fucking story.
Yeah.
And it's so true where I'm just kind of like, it feels good to get it out there and you don't realize the monkey that you're kind of carrying on your back.
Yeah. Let me share something that's related to that. I've been taking a playwriting class for the last several months at the Will Geer Theatrical and Botanic in one of my favorite places in LA. I just had this impulse to take it. I've never tried to write a play, but I love theater. And one of the first weeks, the teacher, Bernardo Cupria, who I adore, was like, write down the worst thing you ever did on a piece of paper, or something you're ashamed of, something you're whatever, and then pass it to somebody in the room. And we did it. And he goes, I think there might be a play in there. There might be a play in that thing. If it's that charged for you, there might be a play in it. So what I ended up writing is something that I wrote down on this piece of paper. It has to do with feeling sexually inexperienced, kind of feeling like I missed the boat around that in a way, even though I identify as gay and have had relationships and dates and, you know, all of it. But I feel like, oh, I blew that. I blew sex. I blew it.
Yeah.
I never got it together. And it felt like it felt so thorny inside me. Mm-hmm. And now 10 weeks in, I'm like, I got this great play. I am so into it. And it is fucking like, I don't know what's going to happen with it, but it is, having put it somewhere, this is a less thorny issue to me. And nobody's read it, but when I tell, a couple of close friends have asked about it and I tell them a little bit and I feel them lean in like women. And I'm like, they might not, the specifics might be different, but I think people have those things. They hook into it. It's part of why I think Heated Rivalry is a hit, because it's so like the interior life of people. It depicts it so beautifully. And I think we all have
the longing and the shame. Yeah.
Just the little moments, like what it's like to go up in a hotel room in an elevator, meet a guy you're going to have sex with. And it's just
and that panic of standing at the door, being like, hurry up and open the door, hurry up and open the door. I don't want anyone to see me.
Just the laser focus on their interior lives. And I just read a quote from the creator. He goes, he doesn't think of it as a coming out story. He thinks of it as a story of two men who finally realize that they're allowed to be in love. And I just love the way he put that. And when you see the show, I'm like, that's what he was saying. You know, anyway.
Yeah, I love that.
The point is, the things that we think, oh, I can't write that. I can't put that out there. It's too embarrassing. It's too personal. It's too whatever. I don't know. I think I'm a little surprised at how less thorny that stuff is around me. And also I'm kind of excited by the idea of making something out of it, if that makes sense.
Of course it does. I'm curious, especially when you're writing about something like sex, do you have anyone when you're writing it that you're afraid will read it? Like, is there anyone?
No, there is some
where you're like, I don't want my mom to read this. Or I don't want my grandpa.
Well, my parents have passed. I have siblings. They're older. I'm 60. There was a quote from, I think it was Winston Churchill. Maybe I saw this. He goes, when we're 20, we care what people think of us. When we're 40, we stop caring what people think of us. And when we're 60, we realize that nobody's really thinking of us. Like, yeah. I think people might care for a second and then it's over. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if the Trump era has taught us anything, it's that, like, just people move on. Like, do you know what I mean? Nothing matters. Yeah. It feels like a simulation and the video game got screwed up. So just do whatever the fuck you want. There are no norms. There are no rules. I don't know. There's something about this era that's like, oh, well, fuck it. You know, put it out there. And maybe it'll connect or something. I don't know. I don't care. I'm not that worried about, I don't know. I just feel like I'm not going to be alive forever. I want to do things. I want to create things. I want to say, I have things to say. And I think that there's something positive about it. It's not like I'm campaigning for something negative, you know, or going after money or whatever. I think that there is power in our stories and in telling the truth about things, you know.
Absolutely. Well, and that's what part of why I'm asking is because it was interesting. One of the people that keeps coming up a lot in my stories is my mom.
Right.
My mom was not, I'll just say it, she wasn't a good person.
And reading about it, and it was like, oh, I did not know this about Bob. And I'm reading these stories, and I was like, whoa, that's not easy.
Yeah. And even so, again, all those years I was even doing my radio show, like I wouldn't talk about her. I wouldn't reference her because she was alive. And I always was like, she's probably out. Like I would always just have like the assumption she was just out there listening. And I stand by everything I've ever written or said about her. So it's not about that, but I've always had this like fear of like, oh, if I say this about her, it's going to invoke her. And like, that's going to be the thing. Like I didn't speak to her for almost 30 years. And I kind of was like, I was always afraid that like, if I talked about her, like that was going to be like her reason to be like, oh, I can't believe you said this about me. And
right.
I just didn't want her to reach out. I didn't want her to talk to me. And she passed away in 2020, January 2020. And so that has been an interesting part of some of these stories that I'm finally telling. Some of them I have written a long time ago or written, different versions of them like that I've held on to. But, I was always kind of like, okay, if that memoir comes a knocking, like then I'll brace myself for it then. But, it's been a great lesson to your point of getting it out there. And I don't ever want to hurt anyone's feelings, including hers. Like I'm not like even my ex-husband, like the stuff that I wrote, I was very mindful. I was very meticulous about, believe me, there's a lot of other details in there that I could have written, but I'm like, I'm not telling his story. Yeah. Like I'm saying there are things that he did and these are how it affected me. And so, and I didn't use his name. I kept all of that as clean as I could. It's obviously, it wouldn't be that hard to figure it out either. But learning how freeing it was, like I said, like taking away that thorniness. I do wish I had learned that sooner because it just, like I said, there's so much stuff with my mom that now once I write it and it's out there, it doesn't feel like this thing that I'm like, here's what it does. It validates my experience. It's not about like, there's her side of the story, my side of the story, and the truth. That is factual for all of us.
Right.
But when we're writing our story, we're actually writing about our experience. So just because you might have said something to me as a joke, but I didn't know you were joking. And so my experience with what you said is very different than your experience with saying it. And so when I'm writing about that, that is what I'm writing my experience. Yeah. And so even if it turns out my mom was, a hero and doing the best she could, my experience was she was neglectful. We were poor. I only witnessed her partying and doing drugs and stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like that was my experience. Right. I know the experience that I had. And yes, I know there was other things that probably happened behind the scenes. I've also had a lot of her friends read my stuff and say, you're being so nice to her. She was way worse than this. Yeah. But my point is like, once it's out there, that feeling of like, nobody's saying, nuh-uh, that didn't happen. You're wrong, Bob. Like no one's saying that. And it's kind of like, I know you love a good quote. Oprah's very last episode she ever did of her show. And she was like, what I've learned after all these years is we just want to be seen. We just want to be seen. We just want to know that we mattered. And there's something about, even if only 10 people read my Substack, but I've shared a story about my mom or about my ex-husband or somebody that did something wrong. It is freeing something inside of me. It's similar to the idea that when you talk about forgiveness, excuse me, when you talk about forgiveness, that you're not doing it for the person who wronged you. You're doing it for yourself.
I agree. I think that's important.
That thing that changes inside of you when you're like, I'm never going to speak like my mom. Like I had to forgive my mom and but I never spoke to her again, but I forgave her. And in the process, it shifted something inside of me. That has been my experience with sharing these stories, has been there's a shift inside of me where I'm like, I'm just not carrying it all on my shoulders anymore.
And I relate to that so much. And I've created a lot in my life, but I think you just need to be reminded, like, it does something to put it somewhere. It does something.
Yeah.
And I'm a little surprised by it in this experience that I'm having now. We started on the boy band front, but then we got a little,
we didn't get very far.
We get a little sidetracked, but, you write about, meeting NSync. You were a fan and you were working on a film set. I would love to get a little short version of that story. But what also struck me about it is you kept a diary. Have you always kept a diary? Because you had you were able to talk about meeting NSync like day by day how that unfolded. So yeah, tell a little bit about that story.
So here's what I would say about my, like, I always call it my Forrest Gump life. Like, I always feel like I'm like right at this place where technology or something is happening. Like, so again, I already told you the story about my podcast.
Yeah.
Like, if I could have just stayed on another 6 months, like everybody that came on my show, what's a podcast? And I'm telling you, every single one of them, you included, Fortune, Feemster, everybody who was on my show, they all have podcasts now. But I was just like one hair ahead of my time. I worked at one of my very first like big jobs. I worked at the company that digitized all of the maps that we now use for MapQuest and Google Maps, everything. Like we created there's one database.
Wow.
And I worked at the company that did it back in 1994. And it all went over my head. I was like, they're going to be like, you're going to have these in your cars. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I barely had a cassette player in my car. And so like I left that company and off it went. And so the next big one is I was blogging. So I've never been good at diaries, but I was blogging before blogging became a thing, because what happened is I was working on movies. I think it started when I was working on Wild Wild West.
And you would work in production, in different.
I was in production. Yeah, I was production secretary and all that stuff. And I remember I was in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I was hanging, and I was literally sitting there. This is a true story. I'm just sitting there with Kenneth Branagh, just the two of us. We're sitting outside the production office, and he was getting ready to cast. I think it was Much Ado About Nothing or some Shakespeare thing he was directing. And I remember him asking me my opinion. Like, he was like, literally, it's like, and one of the ones he was like, I'm thinking about Lisa Kudrow. And I'm like, I love Lisa Kudrow. And I'm just having those moments. Like, it's so many weird moments like that. But back then I would like write them up as a little story, and I would send them out as an email blast, because email was a thing, but websites and stuff weren't a thing. And I was doing that a lot by the time we got to Memphis on Castaway. Right.
This is Robert Zemeckis movie with Tom Hanks.
Yes. And I was on Castaway, which is where I ended up meeting Lance Bass from the hit group NSYNC. But that's where I met him. But anyways, and so I was doing these like email posts, these email blasts, which is essentially a blog. You know what I mean? Like it's, but what happened is all it took was like one or two people, and I'm not kidding you. This is what is the Lady Gaga quote? Like, all it took was the one or two people that were like, please remove me. Yes. Like, why is Bob filling my email with, and by the way, I wasn't sending that often. At most I was sending like one a week. And sure, like, again, this is before Chipmunky or whatever, you know, like
somebody was like, unsubscribe me, take me off this list.
But yes. And that was all it took, was like those one or two people. And so I stopped doing that, and I learned about how you could create your own website. And so I learned HTML. Damn. And I built my very own website. It was called planetbob.com.
Right.
And because in my mind, I was like, I'll create a website, and then that way, any of my friends and family, if they want to read my stories, they can come. Right. They can just come, and then I'm not imposing on anyone. And by the way, that's so insane. The idea that like receiving an email is imposing. It's not going to cost you any money, and it's not spam or anything.
But I know that feeling of like, oh, I don't want to mess up anyone's day at all. I can't live with myself. Yeah. And it was the worst feeling in the world, because again, like when you hear my other stories, like we're talking about like my mom, and, you know, I like barely graduated high school by the skin of my teeth, and I didn't get to go to college because I had to have 2 full-time jobs to
pay my rent, like all of those things. And, and now all of a sudden here I am hanging out with NSync, or George Clooney's teaching me how to play basketball. Like, somebody needs to know this,
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and especially then we didn't have cameras for everything.
Yeah.
Like I read some of these things and I'm like there was one I read the other day about, I remembered the part where we were shooting late on Wild Wild West. And so we were on the Warner Brothers soundstage and we were shooting really late. And the AD on our show was friends with the AD over on Friends. And so we went over because Friends would tape till like 1 or 2 in the morning on a Friday. And so we ended up going over there and like we watched like the last hour of taping, and then they broke, like, everybody went home, but then the crew would hang out, and all of a sudden there I am playing, on Joey and Chandler's foosball table. Like they would sit and we'd all just sit and play foosball and stuff like, but then what I didn't remember, which when I read it, I was like, oh my God, we totally did that. But it was like, we grabbed a golf cart, because again, it was midnight or whatever on a Friday and everyone was still wrapping out. And like, we took the golf cart over to the ER set and we walked through the ER set. Then the one that was crazy, because this comes back to us, which I did not remember at all. We walked through the Suddenly Susan set. So this is a real timestamp here. If you've got Suddenly Susan, Friends, and
it was
ER,
like must-see TV,
TV, and I walked through all of it. But and so then I went home and I wrote it as an email, and that's why I have all of those details, and I'm so grateful for those details, because without them, like I said, I didn't remember any. I've always remembered. I mean, how are you going to forget hanging out on the Friends set?
I mean, you played on the foosball table. That's amazing.
On the foosball table. And and now people go on, they pay that money to go on the Warner Brothers tour to sit on the couch. And we were just sitting on the couch drinking wine. Like, it's so surreal. But like, that's how it was before September 11th,
right.
too.
And you kept those notes. Lance wanted to take a tour of the Castaway set, and that's how you got to meet him and you got to be his tour guide. But in one of your entries, I think it was either the one about meeting them or the one about your friend Wendy, you talked about being friends with Lance before he was out. And you feel like that you might have been like just a person that he could be around, right? Can you talk about that a little bit? And like, I think that mattered, because I think when I don't know, I think it's nice to have people in your life that are like, okay, that's what it's like. Maybe it's gives you a little, I don't know, a roadmap a little bit.
Yeah. So it was actually the other way around. So Wendy, the shortest version of this story is Wendy worked at Tom Hanks' company.
Right.
I was working on Castaway. I became friends with Tom's assistant. She put me in touch with Wendy because Wendy already had a relationship with NSync. So that's how all of that crisscrosses on Castaway or whatever. Wendy and I eventually met. Wendy and I became very close. Wendy is to this day one of Lance's best friends in the world. Wendy is the one who knew that Lance was gay.
I see.
And Wendy is the one, like, so when people are like, well, how did you become friends with NSYNC? Because like we became friends 2 months after No Strings Attached came out. So that's like a very hard time to
that's when they were at the height of their NSYNC-ness.
Yeah, that's a very unusual time to enter someone's life and become, like a trusted confidant. But it was Wendy who really loved me, and she knew Lance's secret. So she knew that he was gay and in the closet and couldn't tell anyone. And she loved me and my energy because, and I'm sure I could unpack this one day that like it says the part that like I wasn't considered like a sexual, what is it, Steve Guttenberg and 3 Men and a Baby? Like I'm always been considered the friend. I was never considered the boyfriend option. But in this particular time, it ends up being a great compliment because Wendy wanted Lance to have a gay friend that, I was free. I was open with myself, and I didn't want anything from anyone. I didn't want anything from Lance. And she wanted Lance to have a friend that wasn't, going to try and date him or try to, just have any of that drama. She wanted him to have so I took it as a massive compliment, but it was Wendy cause Lance wasn't living in LA. So anytime Lance would come to LA, like she made sure she would call me and be like, we're going to this club, we're going to this hotel, we're going to this dinner, and over time, and then Lance eventually moved to LA, and then, Lance is one of my best friends. And, I just spent Christmas night and New Year's with him. Like, I love him to pieces. But yeah, I knew him before he came out, I knew him before he came out publicly. Obviously I knew he was gay for a couple years. I can tell you one little funny aside story. I was working at a film studio when he came out, and the whole thing happened so quickly when he came out, because it was like he was dating Riken at the time, and
I did not know Lance and Riken were a thing. This is breaking news. I didn't know that. Riken from The Amazing Race, the blonde guy that was Chip and Riken, and then they broke up, and then okay.
Yeah. Fortunately, this is not breaking news for anybody but you at this point. But
it's going right in the play, Bob. It's going right in the play.
But so he was dating Riken, and Lance was just so sort of head over heels that he was becoming like sloppier and sloppier about being seen in public, because he was kind of in love. And so anyways, I think they were in Providencetown or something.
And Lance wasn't out yet. Lance wasn't out publicly, just to like close friends. And, it's so bizarre. I swear to God, you're going to think I made this up, but he just texted me over my phone. Oh, that is so exciting. His sister Bertie. He's like, shut the fuck up. Yeah.
I know. I'm like, maybe I'm not supposed to be telling this
It's
story.
all good.
But so he was super, anyways, he was just getting kind of like sloppy or whatever. Anyways. And so somebody from like, I don't know, Page Six or some gossip rag was basically called his publicist on like a Tuesday and said, we're going to publish that you were seen at this gay place doing gay things. And so he literally had like 24 hours. It was something crazy where it was like, he had 24 hours to sit down with his team. And, he did the interview for People Magazine.
Yeah, I remember that.
People Magazine basically came out on Thursday. It totally bit Lance in the ass because he never had the chance to sit down and, he didn't get to talk to the guys. He didn't get to tell anybody, like this is happening.
The guys of NSync, you mean?
The guys of NSync. Yeah. Like there was no, it all happened so quickly. And also he didn't expect that he was going to be on the cover of the magazine. Yeah. Like he didn't do a photo shoot or anything. All of a sudden it was just like and by the way, he only did one interview. Like he didn't do a bunch of press. He did one interview for People Magazine, said, yes, I'm gay. And that was supposed to be the end of it. And of course it was front page news and blah, blah, blah. Anyways, again, time stamping everything. So I'm working at a film studio, and somehow I know I was on MySpace, and somebody on MySpace had messaged me, and it was someone who, I sort of knew like peripherally, and they knew me because they were a fan of Lance's, and they knew I was friends with Lance. And they asked me for an address because they wanted to send Lance flowers. And so I gave them my work address for that one person. And it turns out that one person turned around and posted it on some forum somewhere. And all of a sudden, I'll never forget, I'm at my desk and I get a phone call from like the operations manager who's down in the shipping room. And she's like, Bob, this is unacceptable. This is, that you can't have all this personal stuff. She's like, they were literally at that point trying to deliver like 20 arrangements of flowers into our
So everyone that wanted to show support for Lance somehow found this address, and you were the recipient.
Well, and all these fans, and they all said to Lance Bass, care of Bob. And so I had to like race down there, and I remember having to call the florist. Like somehow the fan was like, this is the address and this is the florist I'm using. And so we called the florist, and the florist was like, we've got like 200 more orders. Cause I'm like, why they didn't just call me to tell me, I don't know. But I'm like, we paused it. And then I remember for the longest time, it was like, we had arranged it with the florist to like take fresh thing of flowers up to Lance's house every week for, I don't know, however long. It went on for a long time.
But in a way, it's beautiful. It's a heartening story, but it's also a funny story. Just the overwhelm of all those flowers.
It was a funny story on how it happened to me. Of course, it's a beautiful story because I mean, nobody really batted an eye about Lance being gay because you know he's beloved and it's been such a great thing to watch him over the years really develop into his skin, and you know, like it's a beautiful thing because I do remember when we first became friends and you were around when
there were times when I spent time with him with Kathy Griffin, and I had a feeling that he was gay, but he wasn't out, and he was always nice. We never really got to know each other. But yeah, I was happy for him, and I'm happy.
But if you remember, because there's even like there's an episode of My Life on the D List, and we're all sitting around Kathy's dining room table, and because we would always go up there prior to the TV cameras. You and I, we would always go up there and do game nights and watch reality shows and stuff. And Lance would come up there too. And anyways, but the cameras were there this particular time. And we're all sitting around the table. And Wendy, who I'm talking about, Wendy was sitting at the table. And Lance is standing behind her, massaging her shoulders. Because he wasn't publicly out yet.
Yeah.
And he was so nervous because I don't think he knew the cameras were going to be there or something. And he was so nervous about what it was going to look like because it was literally, we were all gay except for Wendy and Kathy, and probably, I'm sure Kathy's husband was there. So, but it's a really funny clip where you can see Lance being like, and
I think I remember a little of that energy, that little of that energy. Like, I do remember that dynamic.
He is not like that anymore. Now he's like, he has this amazing house in Palm Springs and he loves to host these big parties. And he's like, literally like the Rock Hudson or Cary Grant of his day. You know what I mean? Like when you imagine like what it must have been like back then. So he's super comfortable in his skin.
Speaking of icons, you did something, and you did it a lot. You had a relationship. Something that I regret that I never did in LA when I had the chance was take a fitness class from Richard Simmons. I never did it. Everyone has their Richard Simmons story and their moment and their photo. I never did. You did a fair amount, and then you kind of you taught fitness, and like talk to me about Richard Simmons and that journey.
Oh, I miss that man. I really do. Well, so since I already mentioned it earlier, I was doing my column for out.com about losing weight and stuff. And so every week I was having to like go find a new interesting exercise class, and then I would go like on a date or something. And so my friend Amy, who was Tom Hanks' assistant, I'm just connecting all of these dots and all these people in my life. Amy's how I met Wendy. And Amy was like, oh my God, we're going to see Richard Simmons. He still teaches at his class and in Beverly Hills. And so we went. It was Valentine's Day, probably like, I think maybe 2005, I think. And it was everything you imagined it would be, that you would want it to be. And he was Richard Simmons. And I had never been a fan of exercise. Exercise has always been a difficult, like, not difficult as in like for me to perform. It's just like, I don't have any interest in doing it.
Yeah.
But what Richard did that I loved, and, you know, his whole motto was, I don't care if people are laughing with me or at me, as long as they're exercising and laughing. And I mean, and you would go to his classes and he, you know, you would be doing 200 leg lifts. I mean, everybody thought I remember you would take people to the class and they would think that this is going to be a joke.
A photo op, some laughs, and a couple of jumping jacks.
They're half in costume. Yeah, exactly. And like, it would kick the ass.
Everyone was like, this motherfucker.
Yeah. Yeah, it would kick the ass of the most in shape people.
Yeah.
But again, like, you know, Richard's just like 3 inches from your face, screaming in your face and being so ridiculous and ripping open his shirt and exposing his nipples. And, and all the while 100 leg lifts in, you know, and you didn't realize it because you're so distracted. And, no, I loved him. And then he decided he hadn't done exercise videos for a long time. And so I think this was maybe 2009 or so. And he had signed a new contract, and we did Sweat into the Oldies 5.
And you were part of the group.
Yep. He had auditions, and I auditioned, and I got in, and I'm on the cover of the DVD.
Iconic.
It is probably one of my favorite, most iconic favorite things I've ever done. It was not easy. Let me go on the record, because I don't ever really get a chance to talk about this. But again, everyone's like, oh, it's so silly. It must be a joke. They think that we went onto a soundstage with a video camera, recorded a class, and left.
Right.
I guarantee that's what people think. Let me be very clear. We rehearsed for 6 weeks. So it was 6 weeks of running. I think there's 10 songs total. So for 6 weeks we ran, and this was in addition to because he taught every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday morning. So he had taught at Slimmons, which was his gym, or his aerobic studio. He taught there for 35 years.
Wow.
So through all the ebbs and flows of his fame, he was always there. You could always find him in his class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then we would finish and we would run the songs, or you would have to be there on Wednesday. So 6 weeks of running and rehearsing those songs. And then when it came time to film it, we filmed it for 3 days at Sunset Gower Studios. And you're on the cement for 10 hours a day.
Shit.
And
please tell me you got paid. You got paid, didn't you? Or is it like my experience with My Life on the D-List, where we got a gift card at the end?
It's funny that you say that, Dennis. It is very much like that. It is very much like that.
Fuck. It was the early aughts. It was before we. Oh man, it was the time. That was. It
was before we. But here's the thing. I tell. But
you still would. You'd still do it anyway, right?
I absolutely would still do it. But tell me if this resonates with you, because I often will say this to people. So first of all, when we signed up to do it, there was no mention of being paid at all.
Right.
And in fact, I think we were I think we each got a check. My memory wants to say $500. It might have been $1,000, but I think we each got a check for $500.
Okay.
And it was on day 1 or day 2 of filming or something that we each got the check, and we didn't know we were going to get paid. But I've always held on to this idea that when we were doing it for free felt like this was so cool. This is so iconic. I'm so happy to be a part of this.
Yeah, I would pay them to let me do this. Yeah.
Correct. Once we got paid $500, it felt like this is it. This is all I'm worth.
Those cheap fucks.
Yeah, this is all I'm worth. I literally rehearsed for 6 weeks, and then 3 days. You don't think my back and my knees hurt by the end of that shoot?
Fuck.
And I've thought about that so many times, and I've used that example so many times over the years, where there's if you do something for free, you feel good about it. You're doing it as a favor.
Right.
Not all things, obviously, but
right.
But the second that there is an exchange, the exchange creates a value, and I'm let me be very clear. This value, and I know he could afford to pay a lot more.
Yeah.
He could have paid us. I would have rather either been paid properly or not at all.
Exactly.
And I'm not complaining about it. It's more of but it's like you saying you did an entire season of My Life on the D-List, and and people think oh, you sat around and ate pizza, and it's no, they would film for 10 hours a day, and Kathy would be you got to be here, you got to be there, and then you're here's your Chevy's gift card. Go have some salsa on us.
Yes. Well, it was something like that. Richard was such a private person in some ways. Do you have a favorite personal memory that was sort of more intimate and a little less the Richard that we know and see on TV?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite days was I went with him down to I think it was in downtown LA, but we went to an elementary school, and I was one of 3 or 4 people that went with him. And we turned the entire gymnasium into an exercise class, and it was part of his, I don't think it's called No Kids Left Behind, but, it was one of those initiatives that he was working on. And that was just probably one of my favorite moments with him, because it It was removed from Slimmons, but it was still in the wheelhouse. Like I never went, you know, I've always been good about like boundaries and stuff. Like there was a part of Richard that I could see behind the facade, and I'm not speaking ill of him at all. Again, I love him, but I could also tell it's that whole "you don't want to meet your heroes" kind of thing.
A little bit, yeah.
I loved him, and I think part of loving him was loving the front facing of him.
Yeah.
But that's why I loved that day, and just riding down downtown in the car with him, and yeah, and I don't know, it was just being part of something special, and it was on the evening news, and
well, also he was going to do it for kids, and that's good. It wasn't just like a camera photo op thing. It was like he was trying to help people.
No, by the way, and let me be clear, he was always trying to help people.
That's beautiful.
Even in his more chaotic, manic insanity moments, like everything that he was doing was definitely in service of, he wanted everyone to be just in shape and happy and to love themselves. You know, an interesting thing would happen with a lot of these women, you know, and they would be overweight and stuff. And so many of these women had gone years without being touched by someone else. And Richard would just get in people's space. And I mean, like the very first time I ever met him, he literally grabbed me by the fat roll on my stomach. And he's like, "What is this?" And, you know, and I say that, I've said that to people, and they're like, "I can't believe he fat shamed you." And I'm like, but it didn't feel like fat shaming, because, like, first of all, he's shining a light on that thing that you're trying to keep in the dark. Right. You know, kind of like we were talking earlier about the writing and the thorniness. Like he was like, "No, let's talk about this." And he's touching it, you know, and I would watch a lot of women who they would fall in love with him for that reason. And that's all really interesting. That's all I'm going to say about that. But there were some very fascinating things. And I always believed that was why. It was because he was touching them and they just hadn't been touched. All right,
Bob, tell people how they can find your Substack. And I have one more question for you after this. So it's on Substack. It's called Magnificent Obsession. That's what they should know, right?
Yes, it's called Magnificent Obsession. The reason being is because Rock Hudson, his character in the movie Magnificent Obsession, his name is Bob Merrick. And I had always wanted to do something with that name. And I was like, I'm calling it Magnificent Obsession.
I love that. I did not know that. That's amazing.
Yeah. I think, but here's where it gets confusing. I think to get there, so ironically, my radio show used to be called The Bob Show, and it was BAUB. And so my Substack is actually thebobshow.substack.com.
The Bob Show, BAUB.substack.com. I love that. Here's my final thought. First of all, I think you're awesome, and you have so many layers to you that I don't know about. But you've always been such a supportive person and a positive burst of energy, and I appreciate that. You sent me a sneak preview of the next post that you're going to put on Substack, which will probably be out by the time this airs. But you write about the year of 2025, and one of my favorite lines in it is this: "If 2025 had a publicist, they would have quit by March." That is so show busy. That is so show busy. And it is so true. But
I love that you love that.
But by the end of it, I was like, I relate to this because 2025 was hard. But I built some shit, and now they're coming to fruition. I got my cataract surgery done. I refinanced my house. I have a job starting. Like I'm writing this play. Like it sort of was like hard, but I made a few things. Some things came together that I had been working on that took effort, and like, oh, it all kind of tied up nicely at the end of the year. So talk to me about 2025 not being a total shit show.
Well, yeah. So thank you for letting me talk about this, because I really struggled with this. So me, like everyone else, I should say, I was devastated, you know, with the results of the election. And like, I was scared shitless of what 2025 was going to look like. I was like, truly, I had visions of being rounded up in concentration camps, and what we have seen with ICE raids tells me I wasn't too far off the mark, and you know, God forbid we don't get a handle on this and make some changes. But But I was really terrified. And so I don't even think I did New Year's resolutions or goals or anything last year. It was just like, brace for impact, get me out of here. And what happened though is like in the last couple of weeks, I started doing like the reflection and the, like my year in review or whatever that you do on Instagram. And I was like, honestly, 2025 might have been one of the best years of my life. Like some of the things, and that's what my article is about. And, and everyone can go read that. I'm not going to bore everybody with what I did, but it's not about being braggadocious about what I did with the year. It was a couple of things. One, the fact that I felt really guilty by wanting to be like, I had a good year.
Yeah.
But let me be clear. It was also a shitty year. Yeah. And I struggled with a lot of depression. I struggled with a lot of anxiety, but I also did some of the greatest, coolest things. I was at the Glastonbury Festival on my birthday watching Alanis Morissette. And I was just like I had really just an incredible year in spite of how shitty everything was. And I just had this thought where I was like, misery loves company, and everybody did have a hard year. And I think it's so much easier to pile on and say 2025 was shit. And, let's move on to the next year. And I think part of that also comes from, we set ourselves up with these resolutions and we're going to do all these things. And then of course, by the end of January, we haven't done any of them and we feel like a failure. And so we just kind of fade off on it. I think there's an important exercise to be like, okay, you did it. You might not have done the things you set out to do, but when you look back on the year, what are the things that you did do? There's a lot of, I guarantee even people who had really bad years, and I know I have friends who lost houses in the fires, there still were great things. And by the way, and sometimes it's just getting through the year is enough.
We're still standing at the end. That is not nothing.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's truly not nothing. And so that was really kind of why I decided to write this particular post. Like I said, it wasn't about being braggadocious, but it's I want to start inspiring people to be like, what's good?
Right.
What's good? Focus good that happened to you? Yeah. We know, I've really, for the longest time, I was constantly on my Instagram reposting every, news article about, now Trump did this and now JD did that. And now I'm I don't know when this is going to air, but obviously, we're just 2 days away from what just happened in Venezuela. And I'm not posting anything about it because it's I don't need to. And it's not because I don't care. I absolutely care. And I'm invested and I am paying a lot of attention to it. But I don't need to add to the noise about it.
Yeah.
And because I think that what we do need more of is, as we've been talking about this whole episode, we need more of what are the things that are bringing us joy, and that nothing is too small or trite or, what I said earlier about the why bother, bother because everything does matter.
Because everything does matter. I like it. Okay. I want to end on a really sunny note. You are a fan of things. And I'm reading about your background. I'm like, oh, pop culture probably represented an escape for him. And he's a fan.
100%.
But you're an enthusiast. You're a fan. And I find that very winning. And you're never too cool for anything. Can you talk just a little bit about what being a fan of people and stuff like that means? I know there's a lot you can say about it, but the idea of oh, Bob's a fan. What does that mean to you when I say that?
I think you actually kind of nailed it. The way that I've always understood it for myself is, I grew up, I didn't have any friends. I didn't have a safe childhood. My mom was very, very absent. And what I did was I escaped into pop culture.
Yeah.
And I would say Madonna was my mom and Debbie Gibson was my older sister. Those
That's
were the
pull
two.
quote. That's the pull quote. Yeah. That's the title of app, as the kids at Lost Culture say.
Yeah. That's where I got all of my influence.
Yeah.
And all the, but again, and to your point, yes, I would pour through People Magazine and Us Weekly, and I would watch MTV for hours because I was escaping. Because if I had just focused on what I had in my life, we truly, and I've written about this, we were eating out of dumpsters. It was not a good scene at home.
Yeah.
But it made me a fan and it made me positive. And And I definitely really aspired to just being a part of that life. And even me moving to Los Angeles when I moved in 96. And I always say, like, the thing where I sold myself short was I didn't move here with a purpose of, like, I'm going to be a director, or I'm going to be a writer. Like, I literally was like, I just want to live in LA and say that I'm a part of the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
And
your stories all have that same sort of wide-eyed, can you believe this shit kind of
everything. Everything since day one was always like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here. Now, look, I can also tell you it got me in a lot of trouble. It took me until probably like my mid to late 40s when I had to be like, I do belong at the table.
Yeah.
You know, because for many years I felt like I was a fraud and I don't belong. I don't belong at this table. Like, what am I doing here? Somebody's going to kick me out when they realize I'm not supposed to be here. But now I feel like I belong here. And, you know, again, like, it's weird. Valerie Bertinelli just comes to my house on Saturday night and we go see Sean Cassidy. And I'm supposed to be like, yeah, this is totally
this is normal. I love it. I love it. What a great note to end on. Bob, I love this conversation. I love you. And people should check out your magnificent obsession on Substack. This is awesome.
I love you, Dennis. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Of course. I loved it. I learned things I didn't know about you. All right. More celebrities. I'm like, fuck, he's killing it. All right. Thanks again to Bob Merrick. Check out his Substack. It's called Magnificent Obsession. All right. So this happened. I went away between Christmas and New Year's spontaneously. I didn't have a lot on the books. I just had to work on the play that I was writing. I had a deadline to get to the end of the play. And then it would be considered for a series of readings that the theater company may be doing later. So I really had to get to, I guess at the end of a play, you type end of play. I didn't know that. So I managed to get there. I typed end of play. So I was like, well, I don't have to just work here. So I decided I would go visit my friend Carlos, who lives in El Dorado Hills, which is a suburb of Sacramento. He moved there 2019 before the pandemic. He's a good friend of mine. And he's a dentist, and he decided that he could have a nicer place to live up there and find work. And I guess people always have teeth and need dentists, and he's very good at it. He was my dentist for the time that we knew each other here, and he's the best. Anyway, so I packed up Enzo, my dog, and we drove up the 5 to Sacramento, El Dorado Hills, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful. What a change of scene. We had some rain. It was fine. I teased Carlos because when he first moved there, he sent me pictures of his place, and I'm like, you live in the Bachelor Mansion. And then I got there and I'm like, oh shit, he lives in the Bachelor Mansion. So his sisters live there too. And, it's big enough that everyone feels like they have their own space. And, Enzo and I had our nice little guest room, and it was just wonderful. I just loved it. It was wonderful. It's a nice vibe, away from, you know what it was away from? It was away from, the industry and all the turmoil that's going on in it, not to mention the turmoil of the country. It was just like, oh, they practice dentistry and they have this cool house. I'm like, that works. Sounds good. And Carlos has a new boyfriend I got to meet, and he's sweet and lovely. And anyway, it was a great getaway. Enzo loved that he behaved. He didn't pee or shit in the Bachelor Mansion, which was a win. And it was very good. And then I decided I was going to be magnanimous because we drove past a Dairy Queen, and I was like, I'm going to treat you guys to Blizzards. It's on me. I'm rolling head. I've got money's no object, whatever. So we decided to go to get Blizzards, and it turns out that Carlos's boyfriend's dad had these random gift cards for Dairy Queen from like 2 years ago that somebody gave him. So long story short, even the Blizzards were free. And also delivered upside down the way you need them to be, which apparently is a rule. Like if the clerk at Dairy Queen doesn't turn your Blizzard upside down in front of your face, there's hell to pay. That's a rule. Anyway, it was the perfect getaway. I loved it. Came back refreshed and ready for the new year. So there you go. All right. That's enough for this week. Thanks to Oscar Rosario for mixing my episodes. My theme music is by Mark Daniels for Placement Music. We will catch you next time on Dennis Anyone. Bye.